Hello and welcome. My name is Francesca and I am the host today for Empower Amsterdam weekly online chat. We're delighted to welcome guests Ruth, Sutherland and Zoe Patience, founders of the new sustainable product-focused apparel web store, Paro Store. This year, Empower Amsterdam's goals were to create a community, and this became even more necessary during the lockdown period. In the weekly online chat, we try to make a different topic each week where you can receive advice from experts and have a chance to talk about the topic amongst yourselves in breakout rooms. Today's topic is finding your Ikigai. Like I said, presented by our guests Ruth and Zoe. Ruth and Zoe launched their business Paro Store just before the onset of the pandemic. Definitely not an easy feat, I'm sure you'll agree, and we're going to be really excited to find out more about that. How they came to this place and why they chose to launch their business is part of their own journey with finding their Ikigai, which we'll be talking about with us today. After the presentation, we'll be going into breakout rooms, into pairs, where you'll be going through some exercises related to the topic. But for now, I'll hand over to our guests, Ruth and Zoe. So welcome, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, this is where I start with the technology. So hopefully everyone can see that. So welcome to our presentation on finding your Ikigai. We were going to set up this presentation as a non-experts guide, I think because we were finding a bit of imposter syndrome in talking about this topic. But then we started to realise that actually it's quite the opposite. We're all experts in our own Ikigai. It's about your purpose. Even if that Ikigai is not an expression that you've heard of before, you've probably heard of your purpose or your reason for being, and finding your own flow. And if anybody's an expert in that, it's going to be yourself. So I think we'd say that we're all experts in the room today. What we're going to share with you is a concept and a framework that we found really helpful in finding our Ikigai. And we're going to talk you through the principle, explain how we went through the process for ourselves. And then in the second half of the session, there's some exercises where you can try and uncover something interesting that could have a positive impact on your life and your career. And I think when we were explaining this in the Eventbrite invitation, we described it as wanting to jump out of bed in the morning. And ultimately, that's where we want to help people get to, is that feeling of wanting to jump out of bed in the morning. You might discover that in the journey today. The workshop sessions aren't going to be that long, so maybe you'll get part of the journey and it might be something that you continue to explore further after the session. So I think we start by introducing ourselves a bit better.
So hi, I'm Zoe, I'm 31. I was born in France, grew up a little bit in Alabama in America, and then moved to Australia, where I went to uni and I did finance and accounting. I went not really knowing what I wanted to do. Everyone else seemed to be doing a business course because it was kind of a good direction to go in. But whilst I was there, I started interning for fashion companies, and I realized that actually the fashion world was something I really wanted to go into. So once I completed accounting, I ended up moving back to Paris and completing a master's in fashion merchandising, which is kind of the business side of the fashion industry. And after doing that, that luckily took me to New York, where I worked for a few different types of fashion brands for about 5 to 6 years. Which I really, really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the energy, the creativity of the fashion industry, and it was definitely the direction I wanted to go in. But after 5 years in New York, I was a bit exhausted. I was a bit tired, and luckily a job came up here in Amsterdam with PVH. So they moved me over, and that was about 3.5 years ago now. And I worked with them for 2 years. It was a bit of a change because PVH is a huge company, a very, very corporate-led commercial company. And after working there for 2 years, I felt my energy start to wane. I wasn't as passionate about what I was doing anymore. I didn't really want to go to work in the morning, and I knew that something was missing. So I decided that there needed to be a change, and I needed to figure out what that was.
And I'm Ruth. I'm 39. I grew up in the north of England, and I also left uni, not really sure what I wanted to do. And that is not something that's ever really bothered me. I think you find it out as you go along. So I moved down to London, and after a bit of experimentation, I ended up in the .com world. And then I moved into the media agency world. And I spent several years there moving through different disciplines, through digital, content strategy and cultural marketing. I'd say I always quite quickly got a bit bored of the thing that I was doing and looked for the next interesting trend in the industry and wanted to move into that. But I kept finding it every time I moved roles. And overall, I just loved working in an agency environment. I loved working in marketing, but it's very vibrant. I found it really inspiring, very creative. And I loved the kind of techie side and the innovation. I think kind of excited the more geeky side of me as well. And then in 2004, I went on a road trip down the west coast of America, and both my boyfriend and I, when we came back, just felt like we needed to change something in our life. I also think maybe we'd become a little bit down by living in a big city like London, but I just had this sense of not really feeling like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And that led us to move to Amsterdam, actually, for my boyfriend's job. Like I said, I'm quite happy doing things and working it out as I go along. And not long after moving, I was lucky enough to get a role at an agency leading communication strategy for Nike, which really, if I think back to when I started my career, would have been such a dream job for me to do. And I was inspired when I started, but quite quickly also lost my mojo in a way. And the reality, especially when I was working at what I really aspired to as a kind of trend leading fashion brand, was not really living up to it to me. So I made the choice to also go into the corporate world, and I joined Diageo. I worked there for 3 years in digital and cultural marketing. And I'd say, on reflection, it probably wasn't the right environment for me. And over the 3 years there, I really, I didn't quite fit the mold. I didn't enjoy corporate life and politics. And I was at a place, especially as Zoe and I were getting to know each other, where I was feeling quite ground down, quite disillusioned. And I just wasn't getting much joy out of going to work every day. And yeah, I guess that's something that we found that we had in common when we met. So if I jump back into our presentation, I'd say this kind of summarizes a bit how we were feeling. We're not feeling fulfilled and we don't know why. What are we missing? You look around and we were seeing other people that seemed to have so much passion for what they were doing, and we wondered what we were missing and how did we get that? And then, I think especially because work takes up so much of your life, you start to wonder, what am I spending all my time doing? What am I getting up in the morning for? What is the meaning of my life? And so we were at a bit of a crossroads, really. And then I went into a bookshop and I found this amazing book called Ikigai, The Japanese Secret to a Long and Happy Life by Hector Garcia and Francesca Morales, and started to read it. I'd really recommend anybody gets it. And this is probably where I go back to the point to say that we're not experts on it. We're simply applying what we read in the book. And it's a great read. I'll kind of give you our summary. The book centers on the inhabitants of Okinawa in Japan and what's their secret, because this is a place that has the highest proportion of centenarians in the whole world. So through the book, they visit the people of this region and find out what is their secret for living longer, and having healthier lives. What is the, like, how do they share that art of staying young while you're getting old with the reader? So they go through a number of elements. They really delve into their life. And there's a quote from the book that says, as we conducted our interviews with the eldest residents of the town, we realized that something powerful was at work. An uncommon joy flows from its inhabitants and guides them through the long and pleasurable journey of their lives. And that was just something that's so inspiring. I mean, you can see the people on this slide. You know, that's definitely how I want to see myself when I'm in my older years. And through the book, they take you through what they found out is their secret. And it's a number of things that range from eating healthily and eating a light diet, the simple living outdoors and taking plenty of exercise, minimizing stress and living an unhurried life, which is definitely something I could improve in my own, a sense of optimism, a strong community and really nurturing friendships, and finally this sense of Ikigai. And so that's something that we delved into because it's this kind of mystical thing that you want to understand what it is. And Ikigai is a combination of two words, Iki, which means life, and Gai, which means to be worthwhile. And it's about living a life worthwhile. So according to those born in Okinawa, Ikigai is the reason that we get out of bed in the morning. It's basically what we might know as purpose or your reason for being, but having a clearly defined sense of this brings happiness and meaning to our lives. And not only does it bring happiness and meaning, but also having that clarity and that North Star that you're aiming towards also is proven to give you resilience to challenges that come up, which I think when we look at the year that we're in right now is very beneficial, because maybe we wouldn't have predicted what a challenge would arise in the world this year, but I think having that centered focus really helps you to overcome things that land in your path. And interestingly, they say in the book, there's actually no word in Japanese that means retire in the sense of leaving the workforce for good, because they feel that having that purpose in life is so important that the idea of retirement simply doesn't exist. You keep going as long as your health allows you to. And that's something that we both found really inspiring. Maybe shut the door. Sorry, they're doing some drilling next to us. Yeah, so that we were like, okay, sounds great, how do we find it? How you can break down what is your Ikigai within the book is shown by this chart by Mark Gwynne. He actually created it by merging a Venn diagram that was meant to show your purpose with the concept of Ikigai. And now this is widely used online and it's often repurposed and adapted, and you find that people have twisted it in slightly different ways. So I think there's a real insight there as well to interpret this as you go along to find what works for you. And it basically shows that it's the intersection of four things. First of all, what you love. Secondly, what you're good at. What the world needs. And then finally, and importantly, what you can be paid for. So I think, interestingly, maybe to think at this point in the conversation, you know, for you, are you doing something that you love, that you're good at? Do you feel that the world needs it? And are you able to be paid for it? Maybe you feel like you've already found your Ikigai, which is fantastic. Maybe you feel like you're sitting at the intersection of some of these circles. So you might be feeling satisfaction, but a feeling of uselessness because you might feel that what you're doing is not something that the world really needs. You might be feeling delight and fullness, but no wealth, because actually it's not, you found, you know, something you love that you're good at, that the world needs, but you can't be paid for it. Maybe you're feeling excitement, complacency, but a sense of uncertainty. because you might not be good at what you've chosen to do. And finally, you might be feeling comfortable, but a feeling of emptiness.
Which leads us to where we were. So when we met, we were both kind of comfortable in our jobs, but feeling really unfulfilled. And to be honest, we weren't even in that crossover. We were more in just a profession, because both of us working for the companies that we were working for, we didn't really feel like the world needed what we were doing. It was definitely not what we loved. We were just getting paid for it and we were good at it. Which left us feeling like definitely something needed to change. So that's when we kind of decided to go through the Ikigai diagram together. So we started with what we love, both of us, which we found was firstly fashion, a little bit different for both of us, obviously, because it's my career. So I was much more in love with the design process and the industry behind it. Whereas Ruth and me were also much more on a personal level. We just loved fashion, loved dress, loved clothes. So, you know, love can be anything. It can be a hobby. It can be something you just really enjoy doing. It can be an industry perspective. It can be a broad range of things. Next, we really enjoyed discovery and innovation, discovering new brands, discovering what's new in the fashion industry, new materials, new ways of working. And then building relationships, which is something we both really took from when we loved our jobs. So working with creatives, working with different people, we really enjoyed meeting new people, creating relationships. And then lastly, we just have a big love for nature and the environment. Ruth grew up in the stables. I always wanted to be a marine biologist. And, you know, this is something that we never really wanted to let go of. So we found commonality for both of us in these 4 things.
Hello, ladies.
Sorry, we just have people walk into our shop quite often. Okay, and so next is, how do I put that? Next is what we're good at. So these are the skills that came from our past experiences. So I was working in merchandising and Ruth was working in marketing, and together we found that that's really about understanding people and trends. So understanding what's happening in the world, understanding how to speak to people, understanding who your audience is. Secondly, an eye for design. We both think that we have a pretty good eye for fashion, which is definitely a skill. Getting shit done, which is a big one and a very important one. This is something that we felt we were both really good at, super proactive. But in our current jobs, we felt that this is a little bit constricted, especially working for a big corporate company. There's so much red tape. You want to kind of get things done, but you have to wait. It has to go through hundreds of people to get approved. And we just felt that this skill of ours wasn't really being utilized with where we were working at the moment. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, we're both really positive and energetic people. And again, in the companies we were working at, we didn't feel that energy anymore because we just didn't love what we did. So it was kind of, we knew we had these skills, but we couldn't use them where we were. So we decided to connect the two to figure out what our combined passion was, which was to create a more positive future for the fashion industry. So a love for fashion, a love for nature, and a love for discovery and innovation, coupled with our understanding of peoples and trends, allowed us, we thought, to maybe we can combine both of these and work to create a better future for the fashion industry. And this is something that we really, really strongly believe in, and we kind of incorporate it into everything we do at Paro. So we had to figure out, does the world really need this new fashion industry? So in all honesty, the initial idea was to create a brand. I think we wanted to create exercise clothes out of coffee beans. But then we thought about it and we were like, does the world really need another brand? And that's a no. There's enough really innovative, cool, sustainable brands out there. So what does the world need? It needs a way to connect consumers with these brands, get more people to consume in a better way that's better for the world, and an easier way to shop. So now we have our passion and we know that the world needs it. How do we get paid for it? So after figuring this out, we thought, how can we get a revenue stream from our idea and really turn it into a job? And in all honesty, we had quite a few ideas, but we thought at this particular time, why not create a new kind of retail store? A retail store that is pushing the fashion industry in a more positive way by promoting new interesting brands, all sustainable, and using our marketing and merchandising skills to get people to come into these brands and help people consume in a better way. We also had a few other ideas that we haven't disregarded. So it could be, you know, brand building or e-commerce consulting, creating a showroom. So we still have a bunch of ideas that we do want to come back to, but we thought at this particular time, creating a retail platform was the best way to go to start that revenue stream. So the idea actually started 18 months ago. And we launched our store in March this year, which was obviously a really interesting time to launch a new business. But we found it really, really interesting. And I think it's been hard, but the fact that we love what we do, we're good at it, and we know that the world needs it, keeps us motivated every day. You know, we have challenges and we have accomplishments, but they're all celebrated in the same way. And it's a really, really interesting learning process. Yeah, and so that's where we are. We're kind of at our Ikigai, but as we said, this is something that continues to evolve, continues to change. And sometimes we think, especially with how the world is changing, maybe the way that we get paid for it will change in the future. But our mission is still there, and our love is still there, and our skills are still there. So it's something that we can kind of continue to evolve.
Yeah, so I mean, that's, I guess, where we got to. We feel like we've got close to what feels like now, finding our Ikigai. We feel much more positive. We do jump out of bed in the morning. So we wanted to share that with you and then hand the reins over and say, let's go. Let's everybody give this exercise a try and see if it helps to uncover something interesting that might lead you to pivoting something within your life or career to lead towards your purpose. So it's time to do some exercises. Hopefully everybody has a piece of paper and a pen to hand. If not, go and grab one now and draw up this chart on a piece of paper through the exercises that we're going to do over the next just under an hour. You'll be working on the different sections that we just went through in pairs. So I'll give you a couple of minutes in case anybody doesn't have the paper in front of them yet, so you can run and get it.
And I'd just like to, thank obviously Ruth and Zoe to go through all of that and sharing so much personal experience there. That's amazing. So yeah, if we'll give you a couple of minutes to go and grab pen and paper.